it seems like 43 years ago, the expectations of the traveling public was much different than today, especially in the segment of hospitality, the country inn or the inn field, which we created the luxury that is now considered, essential,
Another family legacy of hospitality in the Pocono Mountains, this time settlers' hospitality. Hi everyone, it's Jim Hamill. Welcome to the first episode of Season 4 of Pocono Mountains podcast. We've heard from the Kiesendahl family and the Logan family, both behind the great successes of Woodloch and French Manor, respectively. Now, it's the Genzlingers' turn with settlers' hospitality. Jeanne and Grant have been catalysts for the amazing experience countless guests have had at the Settlers Inn in Hawley, and with the help of the next generation, including son Justin, Settlers has expanded to multiple properties across the map, raising the bar for the Pocono Mountains. More on that in just a bit. The Poconos is a year-round destination for millions, with 2,400 square miles of mountains, forests, lakes, and rivers, with historic downtowns and iconic family resorts. It's the perfect getaway. You can always find out more on PoconoMountains.com or watch PTN, the Pocono Television Network, streaming live 24/7. Now, back to the episode. Chris Barrett sat down with Jeanne and Grant Genzlinger for a Pocono Perspectives. They're both great people. I know them personally, and they've done a lot for the Hawley area, Lake Wallenpaupack area, and beyond. Now that Pocono Perspectives will be shown on PTN and Pocono Mountains magazine in the near future, but for now, enjoy a full take of that interview with Chris, Jeanne, and Grant. Enjoy.
Jeanne and Grant Genzlinger, what was the Eddy Hotel, and what did that mean to you? December 1978. Go back to that.
We opened the Settlers Inn restaurant on my birthday, December 14th, 1978. We were 5 young kids. I was 27 then, and we were little renegades, and we left the resort where we were working with the chef, the bartender, the server, the hostess, the kitchen, and 5 of us went and opened a restaurant on our own, and that was in the Eddy Hotel.
And the Eddy is, just so we have perspective, that's not where the Settlers is now, correct?
No, correct. In 1980, we bought the building that is now the Settlers Inn. We kept the name because everyone said we should. but it really didn't fit it.
But where was the Eddy? Was the Eddy close to that? Or
it was at the eddy of the Wallenpaupack Creek and the Lackawaxen River. So that eddy, and we were there for 2 years, and it was the restaurant and bar were wildly successful. We had music, and it was just crazy busy. It was a good experience, yeah. But we were approached to buy our current location, and which had been abandoned. It was a white elephant, and we said, nah, we don't want to do it, and they kept coming
everything
for us.
The shingles were blowing off the roof, and it hadn't been occupied as a hotel for a long time, maybe 15 years.
Yeah,
so we really didn't want to buy it in the beginning, but then somehow we changed our mind about 10 months later and said, okay, well, so we'll do this. And it was a real big leap and the whole town really came out to support us. It was amazing. Today it would have been totally undercapitalized in what you would need now to take a 23,000 square foot building and that needed everything and restore it. And so we were very fortunate that the community was so supportive and helped us, and family helped, and it just evolved into a very special place.
The building itself was a community build effort in the late 1920s, that the reinvention of the town, and so the Grand Hotel was going to be built by the town for the advent of the tourist industry, because canal and coal had gone, and they were trying to reinvent themselves. And so they went around to all the community groups and sold shares, so everybody in the community owned a share in the Grand Hotel. Let's build the town.
Yeah, it was Lake Wallenpaupack was built in 1925. And they built this in 27 at the height of the Roaring '20s. And in 1929, when the market crashed, the project halted until 1944.
So in the 1920, when that hotel was built, was in the northern part of the Poconos, were you seeing the same influx of tourists as?
Well, they believed tourism would come because they built this giant lake, But before that, Hawley, where they put the town, the town was just 3 miles from the lake, and they dammed up the Wallenpaupack Creek, which is the gorge behind Hawley Silk Mill and Ledges Hotel, where the waterfalls. There was a very powerful waterfall there before they made the lake.
The building was designed as 52 rooms with a grand dining room and all of those things of a traditional English Tudor style hotel would be. And when it finally did open in 44, I think, it was a very successful hotel for quite a number of years. Then it closed and was abandoned for a long time. When we bought it, it only had 2 rooms available.
Didn't have any rooms. They all needed to be redone.
But it had been abandoned for so long. But we pared it down to 19 rooms.
From 52.
And, to give them, a little more space and appropriate bathrooms and things like that. So it was a fun project.
Took us 12 years to really get it to where it should be, with the arts and crafts style that it is today and restoring it.
And that's what I wanted to ask, because when you go into the building, it does have the the telephone in the lobby.
Yeah, that was original.
That was from the 1920s. And,
or 40s probably.
40s? So, I'm sorry, so the 40s. So did you keep a lot of the existing fixtures or?
Well, the building had been renovated to different styles on the interior. So our renovation was uncovering things. Yeah, we were very fortunate. When we bought the place, a friend of ours had a house down the street, which ironically used to be a boarding house, and the architect who built and designed the building stayed there, and he found the original blueprints in the attic, which gave us a template of what it was really supposed to look like. So our renovations were the unpeeling to get back to that original Tudor arts and crafts motif. The major change we did, if there was a major change, was where our bar used to be a writing alcove because, of course, it was built during Prohibition. And so there wasn't a bar designed for the space. So that was an inauthentic change that we had to make.
But it had the natural chestnut wood that was beautiful, and it had also the bluestone fireplace was original. And so just working around the size of the main rooms were large and easy to just put together once we knew what we were going to do.
So when you bought the property, you said it took a number of years to really get it to 19 rooms, to get 19. Mm-hmm. So when did you open to the public then for your first?
Well, we opened to the public. Again, it seems like 43 years ago, the expectations of the traveling public was much different than today, especially in the segment of hospitality, the country inn or the inn field, which we created the luxury that is now considered, essential, But when we were fortunate enough, when we were redoing that inn, it was the people had just come from Europe, the bed and breakfast craze, coming back from very simple but historic properties. So, a big thing in our industry then, there was a book called Country Inns and Back Roads, and people followed it like with the Bible, going out to all these little inns that were being restored and reopened after the Holiday Inn and the motel craze. Park your car in front of your room, and then everybody all wants, everything goes around. So people now wanted to come back to an authentic old hotel. And so we were fortunate enough that the expectations were not that high. So we could redo a room that had an original 1929 bathroom and just do the room. And And then we would do them again and again and again. And the whole industry started adding the Whirlpool tubs and the fireplaces in the rooms and the big king-size beds. And we did all of that.
But to answer your short question was, how long did it take? It took years to finish the renovation. But when we moved over from the Eddy Hotel, 11 days later, we opened
just
our restaurant. Because that's what we were about, and all of that, and the tavern and the entertainment and all of that stuff. So that was quick, and the other things took time.
So the lodging component took more time.
We were just talking about the restaurant. You had a term for farm to table before it was known as that.
Well, Grant and I were part in the early 1970s of what a lot of kids, young couples our age, were doing, back to the land. So we came from Michigan, where we had been living at the time, back to Pennsylvania, where I grew up. And we rented a 600-acre farm. We didn't farm it. We gardened it. We grow our own and produce and vegetables and fruit trees and all of that. But, it wasn't like we had a commercial farm. We started a food co-op at the time and, got the neighbors and everybody were sourcing food and very, healthy kind of lifestyle and living on the land, trying to be self-sustaining. So then I think that's what translated into, in the 1980s then, fast forward about 15 years, now we had a restaurant that was very popular and we sourced locally, but nobody knew because people really at that point they didn't know why the food tasted so good, but they knew it tasted really good because it was also fresh and
that was coming
from the farms.
Your farm.
Well, not our farm because we didn't have that anymore. We had actually moved into the hotel.
We sold the farm to buy the hotel.
But we rented the 600-acre farm. And then we bought a 6-acre farm later, and then we sold that to buy the hotel when we got into the hotel business.
But we did set the mission of the restaurant. I was the chef at the time. The mission was that the food was to represent and support small family farming in our community. So that was kind of the direction. It wasn't a style, it wasn't Italian, it wasn't this, it wasn't
we
that.
We did a series on that. There's more farming up here than what you would think.
Oh, there is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hydroponic. I mean, we done a number of those things.
And so that was kind of the mission of the restaurant and getting to know all the local farmers. I think at the time when we started, there was one cheesemaker in the region. Now there's like 20, right? So the cuisine style and everything and the sustainability has evolved to what we had always hoped it would be.
So you as a chef, did you, when you started to source local, when you started when you were on, then you sourced local, do you think that conversion was made farm to table, or was it just something that was part of your DNA that you always did in your restaurant?
I was a very early member of PASA, the Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Agriculture. And so I had made a lot of contacts in that, and that helped me do the contacts to get farmers to grow specifically for our restaurant and that kind of thing. And unlike you would think, chefs don't tell farmers what to grow. Farmers tell chefs what they're growing, and chefs need to figure out how to cook it. But that was my philosophy on how it's done. You know what grows, you know what you do well. And farms in our region are very small, and they're very diverse. So a beautiful diversity of product and produce is available.
So when the restaurant at Settlers, do you remember what your first dishes were, and as the chef?
Well, I remember we didn't have one entree over $10. If that tells you anything.
I think one of the earliest things that we sourced was the local trout. Yes. Remember, and Grant became very good at filleting trout. But Blooming Grove, the Blooming Grove Club.
Trout. And we became known for brook trout dishes, smoked trout dishes, that kind of thing. And that's kind of the style of how things evolved.
And then foods that were, part of Pennsylvania. So the mushrooms, down in Chad's Ford in that area. We incorporated a lot of the mushrooms into different menus. And tried to bring back some historic recipes, things that Grant had a White House cookbook. And so they would look at recipes
from 1895, from the period and things like that. So we would have fun with those kind of things. A lot of
French influence in that, and in the culinary aspects of that time, where it was French. I mean, the French was the biggest influence, and then American chefs started to really take off. And we had a partner who was an amazing baker. She worked for Barry Wine at the Quilted Giraffe before she came back to Hawley and became our partner for maybe 20 years.
So where was the Quilted Giraffe, just for...
Started in the Hudson Valley, and then Barry Wine's Quilted Giraffe in New York City. It was world famous.
Yeah. So Marcia was a big influence for both of us and for our restaurant at the time. And she was also the baker. She did all the baking and...
So you had said, I think I caught this from what you had said originally, was you really concentrated on the restaurant first.
Yes.
And then the rooms kind of just started to add.
Yeah.
And then when did you, in the time period that you took over and purchased it and really built it, did you start to see the characters of tourism change, the characterism of it change? In other words, were more people coming to the market? You saw the need? I mean, it's very obvious you're incredible entrepreneurs with everything you've done. But when did you see that start to turn?
I think maybe after 10 years or so, we began to be very interested in historic preservation through adaptive reuse of structures. So a building like Settlers Inn had to have a good sense of place, had to have good bones and structure. It had to have a sense of place in its community, why it was built in the community, and a sense of place of why it can be the face of the community. So those things started to interest us on the historic side and in historic redevelopment.
But also the natural aspect, too, of where we lived. So if you're about your sense of place, well, where were we? If, we were in the Delaware River Valley, Lake Wallenpaupack, so a lot of natural areas around us. And at that time, the Pocono Mountains weren't all about the mountains. There was a lot of heart-shaped tubs in and so we were fortunate enough that we just started to really work hard to develop the sense of place where we were. And it was really before, we had websites and all of that. So we started creating itineraries for our guests. So we were fortunate enough to get some pretty good press. The Philadelphia Inquirer picked up and came and stayed with us. We didn't know. It was a reporter, not a travel writer, and they wrote a great article.
Back in the time when they didn't really tell you.
And so it was kind of fun to see that people were responsive to the natural aspect. So we started,
experiential travel.
Yeah. We created a waterfall tour and a bicycle tour and things like that.
And Jeanne and Grant's Woodstock tour.
Oh, yeah, we had a Woodstock tour because we went to Woodstock back in the day.
Well, now I got to let me write that.
Yeah.
Wow, that just...
Yeah, that was fun.
Well, we need to talk about that one. But before we get there, the brand was at a real tipping point, right? The brand Pocono Mountains.
Yes.
It was starting to evolve. You saw that because the hardship, it was starting to decline.
Yes,
so
that's right. When I was invited to serve on the board of the Pocono Mountain Vacation Bureau, it was called in those days, and so we really worked hard then as a community, a Pocono community, to really bring back the nature aspect. The beautiful the Delaware River that flows through so many of our counties, and along with the Lehigh River. So bringing those two major river systems in the mountains, and then all the state parks and the natural areas. Of course, you'd think people came here originally for the nature, getting out of the cities, and so.
And now with COVID, that is even more enhanced. People wanting to be in the outdoors, people want to experience all of the richness that we have, right?
And I think it really. People would ask us right after COVID, and when we went from the yellow to the green phase, I think people discovered or rediscovered the Poconos.
Absolutely.
If they didn't know it, and now they really experienced how it changed. And you said sense of place, they just didn't know the sense of place.
Right.
Even when they visited here.
Right.
So that was a real evolution, right? As to what had been working at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
So you saw that be successful.
Absolutely. It took a while, I mean, it wasn't overnight, but our guests definitely responded well, to, and then by the time that, you could have a website and you could put your itineraries on that and attract people to come, because people loved to, originally it was the bed and breakfast or the country inn experience that they were looking at staying in the inn. But then it became about, well, now what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do while I'm here? And so we worked really hard to create a sense of place within 10 miles of us, of things that you could do. And people would come on Friday night from New York City exhausted, and they would leave on Sunday morning just regenerated,
So you were talking about self-care before a lot of people were, or understood what it was, because they had that sense of you got to work hard and keep working, and that's it.
And I think at that time, none of us were thinking about what we seem to know scientifically today, that if you get out into nature, it's rejuvenating. But we didn't think about that. We just thought it felt good to be out walking in the woods, and seeing stars at night, still being able to see the stars, things like that. We would talk about that and to the guests in the garden. Grant was an avid gardener, and his mother, and they created beautiful gardens at the inn.
Yeah, they were well done. So the Settlers Inn started to take off. You started to see more tourism. When did you start to look outward from Settlers for other opportunities in the Pocono Mountains?
Well, we raised 3 children at the Settlers Inn. Our son Justin, the youngest of the 3. So when they started going off to college, they said they weren't coming back. They all went to, one to Washington, D.C., one to Boston. Justin was at Lehigh. And, he moved to Washington, D.C. So kids, they weren't thinking that they were going to come back to the inn. So we thought, well, we have to, we've been doing this for 30 years. It's time to see what the next step might be. So then we bought the Sayre Mansion in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, thinking, well, it doesn't have such a big food presence. And it was a historic mansion.
It'll be easy to retire with only 20 rooms.
Retire without the, so it's ironic that we thought we would retire. Well, we no sooner did that than our oldest daughter came, and she wanted to run that place. So she came back first.
No, that's right, yeah.
And then the silk mill. Because I was trying to get Hawley revitalized. We were both working really hard to revitalize the town. So that's when the Hawley silk mill came on the market, and somebody wanted to auction it off for self-storage units. And Justin bought it. Yeah. Our son bought it. Well, they started coming back.
Yeah. Part of that interest in the community is you can't have a successful business unless the community surrounding you is successful. And when anchor buildings were coming up for sale, we realized you can't tear down the fabric of a community and lose anchor buildings because you're never getting them back. So the silk mill was a large project.
And Justin and my brother, and then we got involved with that, and so that was almost 15 years ago now already.
When we renovated that, Ledge's Hotel had come up for sale. That was an abandoned project, and we took that on at the same time we were doing the silk as well.
So things changed rapidly when Justin sold his business in D.C. and came back full time to this area, and then the rest, then Silver Birches came along in 2016.
Which is a gorgeous property. Yeah. But the Sayre Mansion, was there a Sayre?
So Robert Sayre was the engineer for Asa Packer from the Lehigh Valley Railroad and all of that. And he was the engineer for Asa Packer, who built Lehigh University.
Did he have anything to do with Lehigh University?
He was one of the founding board members, and he built all the buildings as the engineer. His house, of course, was located in the industrial area so he could watch what became Bethlehem Steel, watch the workers, and he could be close to Lehigh University for Asa Packer to make sure the university came to fruition. And then when the university, which was affiliated with a religious institution, was going to lose state funding, Robert Stair stepped in to save that change. And his observatory is still up there. But anyway, so our inn is very close to that, and we're now a flag for Lehigh University at our hotel. So we're very proud of that transition and that renovation that took place, because that was another troubled property.
No restaurant there, just...
No restaurant.
Any meeting space? Just
meeting space,
We do.
And we have event space. There's a big stone terrace with a seasonal tent at this time. There are plans in the works to eventually build a year-round event space there, but right now it's still seasonal in the tent.
So I think that that's a great save for that community. But the Hawley Silk Mill has a story, and I think...
Oh, that's a story.
And I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, because we know the college is obviously there, the bakery, and all the other businesses that were involved. So how did you decide that... I mean, I think you're very philanthropic, obviously, but how did you decide and have the vision to get that project to where it is right now?
Well, when the building came up for sale, and our son stepped forward, son and Jeanne's brother stepped forward to purchase that, it happened very quickly in a very short period of time. We didn't have a vision for what it was, but we did know that it was an anchor building for the community. So we held 3 public meetings in the community. Everybody come out, you tell us, what do we need?
That we don't have.
And we created the box of needs: education,
We had no college in 2 counties.
quality of life things, entrepreneurship, small business, the coffee shop.
Which you still operate the coffee shop.
Yeah.
Well,
So all of those ideas created the box, and we were fortunate. We opened the coffee shop in the old Silk Vault building where they kept the silk. And
The cocoons,
the
which is why it's
cocoon,
called cocoons.
right.
Silk cocoons.
So we opened that while construction was going on and served the construction workers for the first 2 years. And within that period of time...
Well, the college was being built at that time. Yeah, the top floor.
Yeah, the college, which was a great story, if you can ever imagine. We need education, higher education. Well, why don't we just call a couple of colleges around and see what... Hey, you don't know me. Do you want to open a branch in our town? Click. You roll a Rolodex down, and one step forward in less than 4 months, they took the entire top floor, did the renovation, while we were able to secure the funds to start working on the next floor down and the next floor down. It was quite an amazing partnership. And ironically, that building housed 500 workers, young women, ages 8 to 17, that made
More than when it was the silk mill.
fabric.
Yeah.
And 500 people worked there in the 1880s, right? Now there's a college on the upper floor that has 225 day students. And so that whole transformation back to a living building
is interesting. We were talking about the book that I just ruined, Anthracite, and the line they were going down was that many companies came in, moved out of New York, and built silk mills in our region. Hazleton, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, because there was already workforce, because mining was declining at the time. So I guess that's how the Duplin silk mill in Hazleton was the largest in the Northeast at one time. And nothing remains of it now. And it was a very altruistic company. The education, medical treatment, dental treatment, which was uncharacteristic of those times in the 1880s, which was really, really, really neat. But that's another one. But so when the Hawley Silk Mill came back, you were talking about the colleges now because there was no colleges in the region, right, at the time.
Lackawanna College had a bit of a presence for evening classes in Honesdale, and we'd met the president of the college, and we invited him to come and take a look. And he and Justin hit it off, and then Peter Bolin, the famous architect, Peter Bolin had an office in Wilkes-Barre, but also Seattle and San Francisco. He designed the Apple Cube stores and the, famous architect. So he came and did the architectural work. Bolin, Sawinski, Jackson, his firm, did this architectural work at the Silk Mill. So the combination of, the grant to get the solar panels on the roof. So conservation, preservation, education became kind of the mission for that. And still,
currently we have
the boiler room's really neat.
The boiler room.
Everything how that's preserved, the terrace, to observe the, I guess it's a spillway now, right, for the lake, or what's the correct term? For the viewing from the terrace when they lower the water level.
Oh, well, if they release the water from the dam, yeah, that is quite an occurrence, because it's just a force of water that comes. And then after that's been flowing for a few hours, you can see how powerful those waterfalls were. And that's why it was the first electrically powered building of that size.
Yeah, so
70,000 or 80,000 square feet, powered by the waterfalls.
Powered by water. It was electrified before Thomas Edison electrified the first street in New York City. So
the Hawley Silk Mill was.
Yes. So there's a lot of that sort of great history, but all of the industrial buildings, including our Legis Hotel, which was a cut glass factory, they were all powered by water and generated the electricity from that.
So the lake was in the 20s, the lake itself?
1925.
PPL. And that was PPL, correct?
PPL. Originally, it was Scranton Electric who sold it to PPL. Where Lackawanna Sanctuary is now, that was the home of the Scranton Electric watchers, and then they came up with the whole plan and then sold it to Pennsylvania Power and Light Company at the time.
And they leased all the land around the lake, correct?
I think Scranton Electric purchased all the land before they sold it to PPL. And so there's a whole huge history as part of that. The final filling was finished in 1925.
27. By 27. It was a 2-year project, really, I believe.
I think construction on the dam probably started earlier than that. Yeah. But it was a huge, huge thing. And, of course, in the community, Jeannie can tell you, a lot of people in the town, once the lake was there, they wouldn't ever dare go up to the lake. And it just was foreign to them.
There was a little bit of a superstition maybe in the beginning.
Yeah. Jeannie's dad taught everybody in the community how to swim.
So, yeah.
So
we had summer home on the lake, and my dad got recruited to teach up here. But anyway, that's a long story.
Because they
getting off track.
I guess they really didn't go to the shore. There wasn't that kind of tradition here, right? So they were never around water.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And the lake is a big economic driver now, of course, right?
So it changed the whole character of the community. And this whole area, it really is a focal point. Mm-hmm. But there were other smaller lakes surrounding, right?
Oh, tons. Yeah.
Lots. Land of lakes, really. Mm-hmm. Fairview Lake and Whitney Lake and, hundreds. Yeah.
But Wallenpaupack really the focus.
Oh, yes. That really changed. There was a gentleman at PPL back in the day who said, this is our industrial park. But tourism, really.
But it was really, they built it, Scranton Electric built it really to power industry. Primarily.
For the hydropower.
Right, for even Scranton-based, Lackawanna-based, Lackawanna County-based.
And Scranton was the electric city.
The electric city.
So, yeah.
So, getting back to settlers and then some of the other things that you did, Sarah Mansion, now the Hawley Silk Mill, Silver Birches, which is a really amazing property in location, and there's a tremendous amount of capital put back into that property. What year was that?
2016.
Yeah, that was a great transition. Justin, the generational family that owned it since its beginning. You know,
The
they had a
Earhart
farm before there was the lake, and the Earharts did a terrific job. The next generation, the fifth generation, I guess it would be.
No, the third. Eric was the third generation.
So it would have been the fourth. Didn't want to carry on the tradition, so they got together, my son and he got together to transition it to another family-owned business. So that's kind of how Justin acquired that, and then did the renovations. It's quintessential, classic lakefront resort property, and
Vintage. Yeah.
and we made no pretense in doing the renovation. It's vintage lake, and it just feels good. All of that great. We have one old canoe that hangs in the restaurant, outside the restaurant at the entrance, that a neighbor of ours, bought the canoe at Macy's department store in New York City.
In the 30s.
In the 30s, and brought it up. Still has the brass plate on it and all of that.
It's very cool. Yeah.
And
I have to, next time I go.
and if you go to the restaurant, the woody boat that's inside, that belongs to our son Justin. And when he bought it to tool up and down the lake and do all of that stuff, and then after a few mishaps or whatever, we decided to put it inside the restaurant. And I told Justin, I said, Justin, that saved you about $6,000 a year in maintenance cost on a woody boat.
Justin is a big fan of doing things, his big expression was go big or go home. And so he put that boat into that restaurant. It fills up, like a third of the dining space at one point. And then you've been to Hotel Anthracite. So we thought it would be a good idea to put a piece of coal in.
I love that.
Well, go big or go home. A piece of coal,
It's
2,000 pounds of
Well, there's
coal.
three pieces. I think it's 7,000 pounds total, and it's suspended by the drills that Miner used, and it's floating in there. That was a project, getting that into the hotel. But
we had the experience of watching both of those big units, so to speak, come into the building and having to take doors down.
But you must have people coming just to view it because
just fun. And all of the big format photographs came from old postcards, mining postcards, but not all just about mining, about the social fabric things, women picking coal in their Sunday dresses after church off the street and all of that stuff. So there's a whole fabric of stuff over there. The history is so rich, you can't tell it all.
So the who owned that hotel? Was it closed and it was a property recovered, or?
It was a relatively new construction that was done with a developer, city funds, state funds, and federal funds, and within a few years it tanked for whatever those reasons were, and that's when Justin and
a very proactive mayor actually
really
worked with a big investor, and then they called on Justin to work out with a plan
to take it
the
out,
operating.
The city was on the hook, and there was problems. But it was a pleasure because for us, it's a new hotel. Everything was brand new, which we weren't quite used to working with. But it was great, and being right downtown, it's got all the bones and folding that social history inside it and all of that kind of thing. It was really a great project.
Was it called the Hotel Anthracite?
Yes.
No, it wasn't.
No, it's on the footprint of Anthracite Hotel, which burned down, which was right next to the Opera House. And when we did it and renamed it, we did it Hotel Anthracite. We just reversed the two names.
Yeah.
So it's on a historic footprint right in the quadrant of the town. It's a great project.
It's a focal point of that town, really, in Carbondale. So I noticed your family's very entrepreneurial and partner with a lot of different properties, entities, really, to get things accomplished. You could see that very much in everything, just in that description you had with what you had just said. But you partner a lot with a lot of other.
Yeah, and Justin our son has really taken that to heart, that putting together a project is not about our particular family having full control, full ownership. It's putting together all the right pieces of investors that can help make a project successful. We recently did a project in Deposit, New York. We renovated a hotel there with that same style of investor ownership.
And that was a property that needed TLC, or a lot of it.
No, it was in very good condition, actually. The Chestnut Lake, the inn at Chestnut Lake, it was in good condition.
It had been closed for 10 years.
Closed for 10 years, but well taken care of while it was closed.
While it was closed. So it gave us the opportunity to rehab and launch it very
little
quickly.
Lake.
Beautiful, beautiful site there. Yeah.
But that's across the river, that's in a different TPA for sure.
But I read about it, how unique it was.
Yeah.
That the people who live on the lake have to take a launch to get to where.
That was a tradition there that they established, that the hotel would have their launch cruise around and pick everybody in the community up and then dock, and then they would have happy hour. They'd launch.
Yeah, this is way back in the early 1900s.
Bringing back those kind of fun, those kind of reasons why things were created.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
A little bit different than our vault project, the bank in Hawley, which we just did, abandoned bank, but we renovated it into a private membership club.
Gorgeous.
Isn't it beautiful?
It's amazing.
Yes.
That's one of those.
Vault.
It came out so nice. You just, wow.
Well, it was interesting. When I first talked to Justin, we wanted to shoot this there because, and we'll do some more there, but we saw pictures of it. It's amazing. And I know people visit and they've seen it. It's gorgeous.
That was a big project of Justin's. He took that on and ran with it. And, he really got involved in the history and the architecture and the whole Art Deco style. And we really had fun working on that with him.
Well, you've done so much to really preserve communities and the history of the community. And we had done something on the Lackawaxen and the trails. And I wanted to ask you about that because we interviewed you for that. You've done so much with the trail work and the boat launch. Can you talk a little bit about? I just think that's amazing.
I think Jeannie and I have always been community activists. That's one thing. And I think our son and our business carry on that tradition of giving back and being involved in community. One of Justin's mandates for senior management staff is you must, as part of your work, find a passion project that you love within your community and invest in the community outside of work, because it demonstrates that your business, your career is dependent on your community. So the River Project, I'm very pleased with.
Trails are his passion. He talks about a passion project. Trails have been his passion project.
That's been my thing. I've been
30 years.
I've been very fortunate that as a founding member of Delaware Highlands Conservancy, so a land trust that we now have in the Delaware River corridor, over 20,000 acres preserved for the viewscape, farming, forests. I was very happy and proud to be part of that. But the trails are interesting to get people on the water. It's remarkable. The Lackawaxen project you mentioned, it's a state public navigable river. There wasn't one single public access on the river. So our work has been that, and now by the end of next year, we'll have 4 access points for fly fishing, nature viewing, kayaking, whatever. But getting people on a water trail or on a bike trail and is just so important. And it's also a cultural trail. A river is a spine, and all the communities that grew along that river were because of the water, and then they launched into whatever the town got involved with. So water as the spine is sort of in our area is important on every tributary going into the Delaware. It's the number of waterfalls that powered things, the river that was transportation, the canals that came off of that is really shows the importance of water and the importance to maintain the high quality of water, exceptional value streams, and that kind of thing.
And we went to a DCNR briefing, and one of the things they said, some of the best freshwater fishing in Pennsylvania is here in the Poconos and the rivers and the tributaries. You would know way more about that than I would. But the boat launch was part of that project too, right?
Yeah, there's 4 boat launches under construction. One's finished, a second one is about to be finished. The 3rd and 4th will be next year. But that gives the opportunity to get people on the water. And to get people on the water, it's funny, people getting in a kayak, as an example, they may not wish to start their first kayak trip being 35 miles or half a day. Maybe they just want to go 4 miles from Honesdale to White Mills or White Mills to Hawley. So that was also part of the thing. And to get young people in getting on the water, kayaking, fishing, all of that, you think that's inbred, that everybody thinks they want to be a fisherman, or you got to get people to the water.
And
so that's what those
the Pennsylvania Fish Commission
they have been a tremendous partners in that effort to increase public access to water in our region. They've been tremendous.
And they talked to us about, how trout survive and all those types of things is very, very interesting. And that we have that all right around us, which is great. I know we could really talk all day long, and I would love to, but I want to end this by asking each one of you a question, if I could. Well, maybe the 2 last questions. So the first is, since 78 to now, whichever one of you, how have you seen the Poconos change in?
Well, there's been a lot of growth, but I think more planned growth than originally. It was the area was so rural, and tourism then became, I think, the number one industry, and the growth wasn't always as well planned as it could have been. There were traffic corridors that could have been done a little bit better. So now I think that there's a lot of emphasis on the natural world around us, the protection of it, and the joy that it brings to the tourism industry. Really, if the protection of the natural resources I feel is one of the biggest things that's happening. And so, it's a balance, trying to. We all want all the tourists. Everyone wants the tourists to come. And then there's the balance of doing it well, handling the traffic, handling the, getting people in and out of the Pocono Mountains on a Friday or a Sunday.
Sustainability is our future in terms of the natural wonder of our region.
Yeah. And, but we've seen it change all for very good and very positive changes. I think in our industry, in the tourism industry, people are proud of it. And it's not anymore, I think it's recognized from the local people who live in the area. A lot of people have moved here because of the tourism industry. So it's not an us versus them. It's not, oh, here they come. It's let's be good hosts and bring the guests to our area.
And this final question, if you come back 100 years from now, what do you think the Poconos will be?
The hope would be that we have been good stewards of our region and our natural wonders, so that it still is the attraction that it has always been, that led the original people to move here and that kind of thing, and that it will continue to be an uplifting rejuvenation place to visit.
Well, gee, I have to end it there, but that was a great place to end it. So, Jeanne and Grant Genzlinger, entrepreneurs, #1, philanthropists, just great people. It was great to have you today, and thank you for being here. I'm Chris Barrett. You've been watching Pocono Perspectives, and as always, thanks for watching.
Settlers Hospitality, growing and reshaping hospitality, dining, and providing for such a legacy right here in the Pocono Mountains. Thanks for listening to Pocono Mountains podcast. We'll have a new episode each week highlighting lots of the fun things you can experience while you're visiting the Poconos. Subscribe and leave a review and or comment on whatever platform you listen. We hope you enjoyed Pocono Mountains podcast. Please remember to subscribe anywhere podcasts are available. Come visit us in the Pocono Mountains. Plan your trip today.